How's it going, guys? Shape here and welcome to the channel. This video is going to cover what I have found to be the best dungeons to farm for gold in patch 8.3. These farms aren't in any particular order, and depending on your class and professions, these methods could differ for you. So with that said, let's hop into it and find out what those methods are. Be sure to turn on your notifications, make sure you have that bell rung, and drop a like so you don't miss any of my future content. If you have any questions, drop a comment or tweet at me. Also, be sure to drop a comment on what your go-to dungeon is to farm out for gold. The first method on the list is going to be from the dungeon Freehold. Now, first things first, in order to make this method worthwhile, you're going to need to have a fairly geared character that can heal themselves or take a lot of damage. If your character is also a tailor, this is a bonus as you can use the cloth that is dropped to make the cloth bracers, which can sell to the vendor for a decent amount of gold. No worries if you don't have a tailor, as you can still get a decent amount of raw gold from this dungeon and some BOEs that tend to sell in the auction house fairly quickly. You can do this whole dungeon in about 3 to 4 pulls if you're fairly geared. If you're less geared, you can obviously do smaller pulls, but if you get far above the 6-minute mark to complete the dungeon, then you aren't going to be maximizing the 10 lockouts per hour you could do. Over the course of my 10 runs per hour, I was able to average around 5,000 gold an hour on these runs. Now if you do have tailoring, this is going to add around 2,000 gold to this. 7k gold for farming out a dungeon and selling most of the items to a vendor is fantastic. If you get lucky with some of the more expensive BOE drops, then you could really add to your gold per hour here. A couple of quick tips if you're going to be trying this method is to make sure on the first pull you are staying as close to the left as possible. This is because if you get close enough to the top side of the map, the mobs are going to teleport you back up there and it's going to mess up your whole run. So make sure you guys are staying to the left when you go down the stairs. Another tip is if you get dismounted or slowed by your corruptions, then the best thing to do is just cut your losses and stack up the mobs you already have. If you try and take extra damage and pull more, you will most likely end up dying and making the run even slower. Now what if you try this run and you're consistently dying and it's not worth your time? No worries, this one isn't for everyone. Just head over to Skyreach for a nice relaxing time and enjoy around 400 to 500 gold per run, totaling up to 4,000 to 5,000 gold per 40 minutes of farming. Since the mobs in here are only level 100, they're barely going to touch you on a max level character. To most effectively pull this dungeon and do this in 4 minutes or less, I suggest you pull everything up to the third boss. To do this, first kill the first boss, which lowers the gate so you can keep on moving, then kill the mob right in front of the second boss in order to spawn that boss and kill him. Once you're done with all of that, just go over to the third boss and drag the rest of the mobs behind the pillar to line of sight them and AoE them down. Now if for whatever reason you're getting anywhere close to the 6-minute mark on any of your clears in here, I would suggest you pick up a couple of items to make things go faster. On my Demon Hunter, I didn't find this necessary as I was already clearing in under 4 minutes. To speed things up, go and buy some swiftness potions, or if you're an avid PvPer, then you'll most likely have some of these potions from doing that. The second item you'll want to grab is an item called Fried, and this will come in handy once you have killed the third boss and want to skip the wind tunnel run. What you want to do is go to right about here and use your item to aggro that set of mobs. Once they are aggroed, the wind tunnel will despawn and you can just walk up the stairs instead of dealing with that. Also, if you're a caster and have long range AoE abilities, then you can just do that without the use of these bombs. This method is definitely one that you have to pay way less attention to than the Freehold one, and you can still get a decent gold per hour of doing this method. Another dungeon that is almost as easy and relaxing to farm gold out of is the Iron Docks. Now a few things to go over before we get into this one. I would probably prefer to stick with Skyreach instead because the mobs in Iron Docks are the aggro table of like a centimeter and are very annoying to just get them to aggro to you. You basically have to be inside these mobs to pull them, and they are relatively slow once you eventually get them to follow you. This can waste a lot of time by just waiting on the mobs to catch up and kill them. With that being said, you can pull the whole dungeon up to the third boss. By carefully aggroing each mob, just make your way to the third boss. Since you're probably going to be doing this on a max level character, you can just sit and wait for all the mobs to get there, as they won't be doing very much damage to you at all. Once you get tired of sitting there, you can start to kill them. After you kill the majority of the mobs, you can head over and kill the third boss and then make your way to the final boss. Now you might see a few more mobs finally making their way to you, but this is fine since it takes a while to get out of the dungeon. Instead of heading back out the way you came, you can just join any other group in Group Finder and just leave once you have joined the group. That will start the timer to get ported outside the dungeon, and is probably the fastest way to get out of this dungeon. The best groups to join are some kind of world questing or rare killing group, as these tend to have auto invite on. If you just try to join any group, then you might waste more time than just running out in the first place. With all of that said, the Iron Docks is an extremely easy and pretty decent raw gold farm that will net you around 6,000 gold per 10 lockouts. So if you don't mind waiting on the mobs or attempting to get them to aggro to you, then this will be a great dungeon farm to add to your list. If you don't mind using the auction house to sell some of the items, then I suggest you go check out the Vortex Pinnacle. You're going to be able to get around 100 volatile airs from here about every 15 minutes or so. You can also clear this whole dungeon in about 5 minutes. Once you hit the dungeon lockout, that means you'll have around 300 volatile airs, which are selling on my server for around 20 gold per air. If you do the math here, that is roughly 6,000 gold an hour, and since this is one of the items needed for the Viola Sands mount, they are selling relatively fast. The gold you get from selling all the rest of the items will get you around 1,000 to 1,500 gold per your 10 lockouts. Not too bad for 50 minutes or less of raw gold farming. Also, if you are just in here for the volatile airs, then you can jump off the side after the second boss and get ported back to the beginning to reset it. After this boss, none of the mobs will drop volatile airs, but they still have a chance of dropping some greens or a little more gold, so I suggest for the extra minute or so, just to clear the whole dungeon. If you guys don't have the mount from this dungeon, that is another great thing about doing this place, and you can still jump off after the second boss if you want to, as they're the ones who drop the mount. Overall, one of my favorite dungeons to do because you get a good amount of auction house materials that sell relatively fast, and mainly because I was doing this place anyway to get the airs for the My Viola Sands mount sales. The last dungeon on the list is probably the best dungeon farm you can be doing right now if you have a Skinner. Tall Azar can be cleared in about 3 to 3.5 minutes, so you only need to do this for 30 minutes before you have to wait on the lockout. If you have a leather worker, you can also make the shimmering strikers and sell them for 57 to 69 gold depending on the quality of it to the vendor. If you guys are interested, here's a quick guide if you don't have leather working and want to have it. I think having alts with different types of professions is a great way to make extra gold, and now is definitely the time to level some professions to make gold before the next expansion. Now this is totally going to depend on your server whether or not it's more beneficial to level up a leather worker, which is if you have skinning is pretty darn cheap, and even if you don't, just buying the mats off the auction house is fairly cheap as well. If Bloodstone Bones and Shimmer Scales are selling for more than 10 gold combined and are selling quickly, then just putting the mats on the auction house will net you the most profit. Now if your server is selling them for less than that, or you just don't want to deal with the auction house prices, then this is where the leatherworking side comes in. All you need to do is make the Shimmer Scale Strikers, sell them to the vendor along with all the other items you've received during your run, and you're going to be making around 15,000 gold per hour, or possibly more if you make a lot of blue quality items. Since you will hit the 10 instants an hour around the 30-minute mark, I would suggest going and doing another farm for 30 minutes or so you don't have any downtime. I usually go do the Thundermaw farm for more leather, meat, and bloodstained bones. You can also craft the strikers since you will eventually have to do this later as well. No matter which method you decide to go with here, this is going to be one of the more profitable dungeon farms you can do right now. Well, there you have it guys, the best dungeons you can farm gold in right now in patch 8.3. I hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget to let me know any other gold farms you're currently doing that are successful. Please drop a like if you enjoyed the video to show some love for the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time.